Well, the NFL season is back, and that means your fantasy teams are being put to work. And I can tell you right now, for myself, I am not happy that I started Daniel Jones in my league. But I can tell you what I do like, and that is the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast. It's part of the Air It Out podcast network. It's hosted by longtime fantasy football players and friends, Joe and Chantel. And new episodes are released weekly. So every week, you guys are going to be able to get an episode to get your fantasy fill, discussing all things fantasy football and everything noteworthy on the 2023 NFL season. And their highlight segment of the show is Show Up, Show Out, or a blank show. I think you know where I'm going with that, where they make specific player predictions and recommendations and discuss which players show up, show out, or are a complete crap show, for lack of a better word, for the week. And these guys are just getting started. Okay, so they're going to need some love from you guys. Check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, and much more. You can also follow and rate them. Click on the little alarm bell for notifications so you can see when new episodes are released. And you can also find them on Instagram on the Air It Out Network. Of course, the best way is on Apple and Spotify. But in the search, make sure you type in Air It Out FFL. You look for the red and black logo. That's where you'll be able to find them. Again, guys, Air It Out FFL, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Check out the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast.
This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE podcast.
The champ is the one that everybody wants, me. WrestleMania! Claymore! Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Welcome, everyone, to the current state of WWE. I've got Anthony DeMarco with me tonight. And just before we get going, guys, on the topic, which you probably guessed based on the title of this episode, want to remind you that this Friday we are going to have him at his own exclusive After Dark show for the SmackDown tier and higher on Patreon. Really excited about that. Don't forget, if you want a 7-day free trial, it's available on Patreon. And excited to bring on several people over the last week, and I think you'll enjoy it. But tonight, we're going to be talking about the United States Championship, the Intercontinental Championship, where they're at, where we think they could be going with that, who could be the next champions. And also Iyo Sky, which I'm really excited to be talking about with you too, because I don't think we've done a whole lot with the women's division, specifically on SmackDown. So really excited to be talking about these things. How you doing, man?
Doing well. I hope everyone enjoyed my my teaser episode, I guess, as we prepare for the inaugural episode of me hosting After Dark. Looking forward to really spicing things up over on Patreon. Obviously, it's not going to be on the free feed, so I'm hoping as many people get over there as possible to check out, pardon me, what we have in store over for everyone on the Patreon side of things, and this repackaged version of After Dark. But I am really looking forward to getting into it tonight with our discussions about the mid-card championships.
Yeah, definitely. This is something, again, we don't do a whole lot of focusing on this, and while the main event scene kind of reshuffles itself, and we wait for Roman to return, and we wait for Seth Rollins to identify his next opponent, which may come or should come on Monday Night Raw as it's being recorded right now, we don't really get a whole lot of time to talk in depth about the U.S. and Intercontinental. So let's do it, and then towards the back end, we'll talk about Iyo Sky. And so let's start with the United States Championship and the Intercontinental as a whole. Where do you think, or how do you feel about these championships in terms of the value that they hold right now?
Well, let's start with the low-hanging fruit and the Intercontinental Championship. When was the last time the IC Championship felt this important? And honestly, it would probably go back to WrestleMania 31 when they had the 7-man ladder match. And that's not even suggesting that it was because of who was holding it. I believe Wade Barrett went in as the IC champion and Daniel Bryan walked out as the Intercontinental champion. But it was more just the importance of it opening the show. A very good WrestleMania 2 and WrestleMania 31. And in the build up to the pay-per-view, so many of those key wrestlers kind of vying for it. I believe Dean Ambrose was in that match too. Obviously Wade Barrett, Cody Rhodes, then known as Stardust. Luke Harper was just a really cool vibe going into that pay-per-view. But since or before that, and thinking about one singular champion making it feel that important, I guess The Miz in 2016, when he really went out of his way to kind of legitimize how important that title should feel. But even though The Miz, and I have to give him flowers, I think he did an amazing job in 2016, 2017 when he was really prioritizing that championship, never really brought it to where it was now. And we've had great IC champions over the years. Like Roman has been IC champion. Seth Rollins had a good run with it after winning it at WrestleMania 34 and holding it through the summer of 2018. Like we've had big names hold that Intercontinental Championship. Finn Balor, Bobby Lashley, Dean Ambrose. But it just felt that creatively it was always taking a backseat. And now we have Gunther, the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in history, and it feels like even on a show where you have a world championship and Seth Rollins holding that, it just feels like one of the most coveted prizes in the business. And I really have to give Triple H his flowers on this, that he's done an amazing job not only legitimizing the championship, but making the title holder in Gunther feel super, super important. And even to a point where I don't mind it being defended on Monday Night Raw or free TV because of how good of a job they've done building it up.
Yeah, I've kind of been softened to the whole, championship matches on free TV. I've thrown the white towel on that one. It's here to stay. But with Gunther, I mean, this dude, you and I have sung his praises for months and months and months and months, and it's just continuing to prove itself every week. This man on the microphone, even his cronies, which are leaps and bounds behind him in terms of star power, have added to his character. The whole entrance, all about respect, hard-nosed, throwback star that has done nothing but add value to that belt every single time that he speaks and holds the belt and has a match. And as you said, I don't know the last time that somebody made this belt feel that important. I mean, I'm thinking back to like Chris Jericho in the early 2000s. I'm thinking back to, The Miz did a decent job. Shawn Michaels in his heyday was a great Intercontinental Champion. The Rock in his own right was a great Intercontinental Champion before he started really diving in with the Stone Cold feud in the 97 timeframe. And so there's been some great ones, and Gunther is right up there and arguably in the top 3. I understand that total days he's number 1, but the subjective part of this of who is the most valuable or who had the best run, of course, extremely subjective. Gunther has to be in the conversation now. This dude has completely taken the Intercontinental Championship by the horns and just driven it to the goal line. A little bit of a football reference for those of you on this Monday night football game going on right now. But right now we have a brilliant run as champion with Gunther. I have no complaints about the way that they've booked him. It hasn't been totally perfect, but this is as good as you could imagine it being. And I mean, looking forward, this is maybe what I'll pose to you. Who or would you, before this year is over, have him drop the belt? He's now crossed the finish line. He's now the number 1 longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. So they've got there. But would you take the belt off him before the end of the year or even before WrestleMania 40? And if so, who the heck would that be?
I feel like between now and the Rumble, you can afford to drop the belt off him. And it's just because I think eventually you're going to have run your course as what you can do with him as IC champion. As much as I love long title reigns, as much as I love them prioritizing and elevating the Intercontinental Championship, it will never be on par with the WWE Championship or a world title reign like we're seeing Roman Reigns go on. And I do think that you can make other wrestlers feel or be elevated rather as much as Gunther. Maybe not to the same extent. Like not everyone's going to break the record and not everyone's going to have that cachet or it factor like Gunther, but you can certainly elevate some superstars. I mean, I originally wanted to say Drew McIntyre, but I feel like he has bigger things ahead of him. Like I feel like a world title heel run for Drew is in the cards sometime in the near future. I mean, Chad Gable is a decent option, but I mean, I think that Chad Gable has kind of found his home as like an enhancement talent on steroids in a lot of way, or at least until they break him off from the Alpha Academy. And to be honest, I really do like the Alpha Academy. I just feel like there's something more there with Chad Gable, even though he has been awesome. As my cat's fight in the background, I'm sorry about that. But you're definitely going to have to find someone who's worthy of dethroning Gunther. And I look at the SmackDown roster, I look at the Raw roster, and there isn't a name that just screams that they are the ones to do it, except for one. And it would be kind of coming full circle. And we've talked about this before. It would involve him changing brands, but I feel like the best guy to do it, and it would be kind of poetic, would be Sheamus.
That absolutely would be, and perhaps they do initiate another trade. Now he can't be part of this trade because the trade already went from SmackDown to Raw. Now somebody from Raw needs to come to SmackDown, and you know that's throwing people up in arms about who that could be. But Sheamus, if they want to go back there and have an quote interpromotional match, even they could do it. If they want to do it on separate brands, WrestleMania is the time to do it. But then you'd have to switch the US to the opposite brand. You can't ever have those two on the same brand, obviously. But I don't think anyone would complain about that. And I think Sheamus is more than deserving. You've said it so many times, Sheamus is an unsung hero. He's been one of the most foundational pieces of WWE that so many of us take for granted. And him and Gunther, as we know, put on the match of the year, last year, and was unbelievable in their series of matches that they had. Obviously, their first one was just incredible. Was it at Clash at the Castle? That was our first one, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so I mean that was just incredible, and I think it's a credible opponent. I don't think it would hurt Gunther to drop it. And honestly, whenever Gunther does drop the belt, I honestly look at this and say, well, that means that Gunther's moving to the next level. I think they're looking at Gunther as a future world champion, and he could be the next one if Drew doesn't turn heel and Gunther drops the IC belt. If Gunther drops the IC belt, I'm going to say it to everybody, look out, because Gunther's now going to be going for Seth Rollins in that world title. So if they don't slide Drew into that slot, I think Gunther, after he drops it, could go into that slot and face Seth Rollins. If they want to do that sometime at the end of this year, or maybe into next year or at WrestleMania season. But outside of that, if they're not going to do something with a trade or Sheamus, I mean, I'm looking at the roster. I honestly don't know who is credible to do this. You could have Cody Rhodes, but we all know Cody Rhodes is destined for Roman Reigns in that championship that I won't even get into. But so he's out of the picture. He's at that next level. I don't even know. So like that is probably your only option unless you have Sami Zayn or Kevin Owens go off on their own and dethrone Gunther that way.
I just want it to mean something. Like I want the victory of him or the defeat of him losing it feel as equally as important and significant for the guy winning it. And Sheamus winning the one title that he's never held in WWE would feel that significant. It would make him a Grand Slam champion. I mean, you could also make the same case for John Cena, which, I mean, it's absolutely flabbergasting to think that John Cena has never held the Intercontinental Championship, but it just doesn't feel the same as it would for Sheamus. Just because, like, I feel like Sheamus has more tread left on the tire than John Cena, and that's not saying a whole lot because of how far down the road Cena already is. But I just feel like Sheamus has earned that because of what he's done the last 12 months. And I believe he even said out of character on a few months ago about how, you know, they didn't take advantage of how much steam he caught over the last 12 months. And even though, like, obviously Gunther holding the Intercontinental Championship was probably the best decision, there was a lot more there with Sheamus's run. And I think that you could kind of salvage that here, that he was the one who initially elevated Gunther to where he is, and then he was the one to finally dethrone Gunther after Gunther achieved the incredible feat of becoming the longest reigning IC champion. And then that victory would make Sheamus finally hold the singles championship. And I believe the last time Sheamus held the singles title was, did he not defeat Matt Riddle for the US title at WrestleMania 37? I feel that's the last time he held a singles championship. Right. Yeah. So if you would, and it would give Sheamus something to do as well. Like, I mean, the Brawling Brutes feel stale on SmackDown. They feel kind of lost in the shuffle on SmackDown. And even Sheamus is a singles star. Like, how many top baby faces is he behind on SmackDown? Like, you have Bobby Lashley, you have AJ Styles, you have LA Knight. Like, he is kind of really lost in the shuffle on SmackDown. Rey Mysterio, Santos Escobar, like, the list goes on and on. So maybe him shifting to Monday Night Raw in some form or fashion, a trade, whatever, and becoming the Intercontinental Champion, I think that would be something that would really reignite his character, give him something, a fresh set of opponents to work with, and it would make the defeat of Gunther feel significant as well. And it would probably make people feel okay with Gunther dropping the championship, because I think people would be very interested in a babyface run for Sheamus as the Intercontinental Champion.
Well, let's just hope that Cody can cash in more of his political chips to make that happen.
We should ask Cody nicely.
Yeah, let's ask him nice and make sure that we get what we want from Cody, because he is pulling strings backstage to get people traded. So keep our fingers crossed. But no, you're right. I mean, in all seriousness, you're right that Sheamus is probably, again, given I know he's on the opposite roster, but that really is, out of the whole roster, the guy that makes the most sense, the guy that's the most credible, a way to reward Sheamus for, not just his tenure, but what he means to the company. When he's not there, the Brawling Brutes are nothing. I'm sorry. Like, you look at them, when they came out this past week, there was just no reaction. I mean, when they confronted the Judgment Day, there was just like the most lukewarm, sad, pitiful reaction for the Brawling Brutes. And, it was because Sheamus is the heart and soul of that. It's like, it's the, the Clique without AJ Styles. Like, it's just the Good Brothers. Like, they mean so much to that group that when you take them out, it's just kind of like your leftovers. It's just the way it is. So Sheamus, though, going to Raw to face Gunther would be amazing. Or, honestly, what if they just swap the IC and US titles? And Gunther comes to SmackDown, back to SmackDown, and you have Rey Mysterio go to Raw. You could do something crazy like that, too. But there's a lot I want to say about the U.S. title, too. But any wrap-up on the IC?
No, just the fact that it probably hasn't been in to kind of build off of what my original thought was. The last time the IC Championship felt this significant and how much it's kind of elevated the wrestler simultaneously with the wrestler elevating the belt was probably Randy Orton's run with it in 2004.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That was prior to him giving his updates about his shoulder injury, what percentage his shoulder is. Yeah. That was, man, I forgot about that run. That's true.
He lost it to Edge at Vengeance 2004, which was a pretty significant championship victory for Edge, because he had been dealing with neck injuries for like the better part of 2 years on and off. Finally comes to Monday Night Raw and ends in, I believe Orton held that belt for like 7 months or something. So that's probably the last time I can remember the Intercontinental Championship feeling that important and having a rising star hold that belt and make it feel that significant.
And the other thing the only thing that's putting a shadow on the run of Gunther with the belt is the Roman Reigns run. That overshadows all runs. If you took the Roman Reigns run out of this, and you put that aside, and it was just, it didn't happen. This would, I think, mean more, because, prior to the Roman run, we would be like, oh my God, 400, like, you'd be like, how many days? This feels like forever. Now it's kind of like, oh, good, cool achievement, but look at how many days Roman's been champion, right? We're coming up on 1,100 days, so that's the only thing that is a drawback. It's just a byproduct of of the Roman Reigns run is all other runs that they're talking about on their own product are cannibalized by Roman Reigns. So
yeah, and a champion who's never really there. And I mean, not to go on a Roman Reigns diatribe, but like, how long is he going to be non-existent right now?
Well, I think he's injured, to be fair. From what we heard, he got injured in the Jey Uso match. So if that's true, then I understand. But at the same time, would he be out anyway? As I've said before, he's got a perfect schedule to nurse an injury. We'd never know he's injured. So, I mean, he could be injured, but he also could be out regardless if he was injured.
Well, that's my whole point, is that I don't think, maybe he would show up on a SmackDown here and there, but I don't think he was defending his Undisputed Championship at Fastlane or Payback. No. And Survivor Series, the last 4 or 5 years has not. Well, I believe they defended I think Brock defended the WWE Championship at Survivor Series 2019 against Rey Mysterio. But I mean, aside from that, going back to 2016, that typically has not been a pay-per-view where championships are defended. It's always like brand versus brand or gimmick 5-on-5 matches or war games last year. So, I mean, you could be looking at the Royal Rumble as the next time that he actually defends his Undisputed Championship.
It's absurd. It's just so it's absurd. I'm just going to leave it there, and that's all I have to say about it, because I will add about 40 minutes to the show.
Well, is there a pay-per-view between Survivor Series and Rumble? Because there wasn't last year.
Ooh, good question. I'd have to punch that into the Google machine. I don't know. So is there? It's a WWE PLE schedule 2023. Should be pretty quick here. So there, let's look at the schedule. This was updated a week ago, so this has the latest info. Fastlane, Survivor Series. Oh, okay. So we do have Crown Jewel
in December.
And this is it doesn't give a date. Fastlane in 2023, then Survivor Series. Crown Jewel, hold on. It's going to be held, November 4th.
Okay, so that's before Survivor Series.
Yeah, okay, so that's actually before, yeah. Crown Jewel will be held on November 4th. So, okay, Saturday, November 4th, Crown Jewel will be held there, and then Survivor Series is taking place on November 25th. So, yeah, I don't see anything in December, so it looks like they're following the same schedule.
Okay, so then if that's the case, he will be competing at Crown Jewel, like 100%. Like, there's no way he doesn't defend at Crown Jewel. So that I just wasn't. They do usually have a Crown Jewel in late October, early November, but I just wasn't sure if there was one this year. But if there is, then yes, then you could probably pencil in his next defense at Crown Jewel. Like, I would be absolutely floored if he doesn't defend the title there.
Yeah, the Saudis have unlimited funds, so they'll pay enough to make a championship match happen. I mean, there's no chance of him losing it, which also is another complaint about the run of Roman. But all right, let's get to the U.S. title, and then we'll get to Iyo. So the U.S. title, I mean, obviously Rey Mysterio's held it. He's held it for about a month, if not exactly. And I think that most fans are looking at this run and saying to themselves, cool, it's a nice nostalgic moment. A guy that certainly is more than deserving of it in Rey Mysterio. Many have speculated that Santos Escobar could be the one to turn on Rey, and he still could. But with this run with Rey Mysterio, I mean, I think most fans will look at this and say, hey, it's probably a short-term run. It's weird to say that Rey's a transitional champion, but in this stage of his career, he kind of is. I think that it was the best thing in the world for Austin Theory to take that, to remove that belt from him. It's very rare that we say, it'll help somebody when they take a championship off of them. I can't remember the last time I've said that, but for Austin Theory's sake, just to change his identity and what he's doing and all the stink that really resonated off of him. After WrestleMania and the win over Cena that somehow tanked his career, all of that. He just needed a clean slate, and Rey Mysterio, I think, while he hasn't done a ton, is not going to hurt the United States Championship. How do you feel about where the U.S. title is right now?
It's sad, honestly. I'm definitely more, I guess, accepting of Rey Mysterio now that he's broken away from, being best friends with his son and getting piggyback to the ring. And I could appreciate the nostalgia. And I do agree that Austin Theory desperately needed that title off of him. I really don't know if Rey Mysterio was the guy, because it was a very, very sour, or not even sour, just a boring flat run at the end for Austin Theory as the US champion, and it going to Rey Mysterio it just feels very vanilla. And I just feel like that championship, especially given all the mid-carders on SmackDown, like I think that SmackDown has a lot of good singles mid-card guys. Like you look at Sheamus, even a Solo Sikoa, Santos Escobar, LA Knight, Karrion Kross. Like, I mean, even Edge, I guess you could have put the title on him. Now you have Bobby Lashley, like AJ Styles as well. Like, I just thought that there were a lot better options to feel that title be more important. And this is the one hiccup I think Triple H made with LA Knight. I think he could have won the U.S. title. Like, I think LA Knight could have stood to win the U.S. championship. I gave it a chance. I was convinced it was going to be Santos Escobar. They go with Rey Mysterio, and he hasn't been bad. It's like you said, but he's just kind of been there. And I'm not going to lie, like, the whole LWO thing has soured fast for me. I really preferred them as Legado del Fantasma. Like, full disclosure, I thought they were way more badass. I get why they turned them babyface and made them the LWO. But the whole, like, Santos Escobar basically making out with Rey Mysterio's face every, like, time he comes out, it's kind of just gotten a bit weird for me, if I'm being quite honest with you. Mm-hmm. And it just feels, it feels like the Mysterio family 2.0, but this time they could actually wrestle. I would have preferred it going on LA Knight, and I think that what LA Knight would be doing with The Miz right now would feel a lot more important, and then you could have Grayson Waller and Austin Theory all back in the mix for the U.S. title. So that's where I would have preferred it to be, because I look at what's going on with LA Knight and The Miz, and then the kind of involvement of Theory and Waller this week. And I just thought to myself, like, man, it would feel way more important if there was a championship involved here. And the U.S. title is just kind of floating in obscurity on Rey Mysterio's shoulder. So I do think that there's a lot of work to be done with the U.S. championship, but it's not that hard to get it to relevance. In my opinion, it was low-hanging fruit. I get why Triple H went the opposite direction, the slow burn with LA Knight. I just think that now that we've seen the result, probably would have been the best idea to put the U.S. championship on him.
And I think they will. It's just, I think that right now you have LA Knight tied up with The Miz. We have Rey Mysterio, who again is in the LWO, which I would concur with that. Where, it's not exactly the most interesting group. They did it out of convenience of going to Puerto Rico earlier this year, and then the group just kind of hung on. So we all know why they did it, and they still get a decent reaction, obviously led by Rey Mysterio. And Rey Mysterio is always going to get a good pop. He's a legacy star that can still go, and how he's still performing at this level is really kind of fascinating. How much mileage he has on his body to be able to perform at the level he does, where he barely has missed a step. He's slowed down a little, but nowhere near where he should be given his age and how many matches and bumps he's taken. But that said, I don't hate him as champion. I just don't think that he's needed.
He's just there.
I think. Yeah, it's weird. He's a Hall of Famer. He is one of the greatest of all time, but it's weird that he's champion and like no one cares. No one hates it, but like no one seems to care or feel strongly that like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. This is great. Rey Mysterio has the belt. It was a way, I think, to get the belt off of Theory, but not yet put it on Knight. They weren't ready for Knight. They have a plan in place, and clearly that we are in a holding pattern with The Miz, and then whatever's next for Knight. Eventually, sure, he's going to take the belt. Now, the interesting part is if Knight takes the belt, is it going to be a one-on-one match with Ray? Because then they risk the potential, like, well, we love Ray, he's a legacy star, and we want LA Knight to win, but do we want him to win against Ray? So I've proposed a triple threat where Ray is not involved. We have a third-party heel, and LA Knight beats the heel. Therefore, we get the belt on LA Knight without having too much of a conflict of, well, he beat Ray, and I don't know if I like that. So it's really not difficult to do. It's just, in your mind, when do you think they pull the trigger on an LA Knight U.S. title win? Well, the NFL season is back, and that means your fantasy teams are being put to work. And I can tell you right now, for myself, I am not happy that I started Daniel Jones in my league. But I can tell you what I do like, and that is the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast. It's part of the Air It Out podcast network. It's hosted by longtime fantasy football players and friends, Joe and Chantel, and new episodes are released weekly. So every week you guys are going to be able to get an episode to get your fantasy fill, discussing all things fantasy football and everything noteworthy on the 2023 NFL season. And their highlight segment of the show is Show Up, Show Out, or a blank show. Like, you know where I'm going with that, where they make specific player predictions and recommendations and discuss which players show up, show out, or are a complete crap show, for lack of a better word, for the week. And these guys are just getting started, okay? So they're going to need some love from you guys. Check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, and much more. You can also follow and rate them. Click on the little alarm bell for notifications so you can see when new episodes are released. And you can also find them on Instagram on the Air It Out Network. Of course, the best way is on Apple and Spotify, but in the search, make sure you type in Air It Out FFL. You look for the red and black logo. That's where you'll be able to find them. Again, guys, Air It Out FFL, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Check out the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast.
I think it needs to be sooner rather than later, just because I don't think he'll stay in the mid-card for a while. And I think that LA Knight shouldn't have a long run as U.S. champion. As weird as that is to say, I feel like it should be short and sweet. Like, he wins it at Payback or Crown Jewel, and he loses it by Rumble. And then that kind of shoots him off and catapults him into the main event. Because sometimes it's better short and sweet. It doesn't always have to be this mega long title reign of like a Roman Reigns or Gunther. And I think that was the ultimate downfall of Austin Theory, is that they kept that championship on him. I believe he won it at Survivor Series last year, and he just dropped it, like a month ago? So that was, on a 9-10 month long run. And I think that was an example of sometimes trying to make a run just long for the sake of it isn't always the answer. And I don't think LA Knight would be that guy as well. I mean, the next person to have a long run as U.S. champion is obviously up for debate. I feel like Grayson Waller at this point has laid the foundation to maybe be that. But I mean, I think that LA Knight probably should win it between now and Survivor Series, because I don't think it should be an exceptionally long run.
Yeah, the Grayson Waller thing, though, is interesting because he hasn't won a match yet. To my knowledge, I don't think he's won a single match. Now, granted, his opponents have been big stars to mega stars, so no pun intended. But that said, he hasn't won yet. Like, he's got a pretty bad record on the main roster. So, if we're looking at that, however, WWE doesn't care so much about a win-loss record. It's just a little bit of, well, what's your case, man? You haven't won a single match yet. But I understand the idea of Grayson Waller doing that. The thing with LA Knight, though, that you bring up is a good point is, well, we're kind of looking into the late 2023, which then you bleed into 2024. We're looking at the Rumble. And many people have already months ago claimed that LA Knight is the number one, not number one contender, but the favorite, the heavy favorite to win the Rumble, and rightfully so, he is. The thing is, though, you can't win the Rumble as U.S. champion. It's messy. You can't do it. So, as you said, if he's going to win it, he's got to have a significant run of a few months. You got to do it now. If they don't, maybe he loses it at the Rumble and he's a surprise entrant in the Rumble. You could do it that way. with LA Knight, because WWE is taking an interesting path with LA Knight's trajectory so far. A lot of it hasn't been very predictable, but his support continues. So, yeah, that is something that they need to consider. But if they have LA Knight win the Rumble, well, then where do they go with, does he face Roman? It all comes down to The Rock, obviously, on SmackDown, or he could face the world champion on Raw. There's possibilities. But I guess the question to you is, if he drops it before Rumble or at Rumble, he wins the Rumble, well, then who's LA Knight facing at WrestleMania? Is he going to face the world champion? Is he going to face the undisputed champion? Like, where do they go?
I think LA Knight should be facing Roman Reigns, and I think that he's probably the best candidate you've ever had to dethrone Roman Reigns because of how unique his meteoric rise has been. Very Daniel Bryan-esque, maybe not to quite the same level, but very, very similar. A guy who just dug through the trenches and worked his way up, and it organically has become a crowd favorite. That's the way I would book it if I was, Triple H head of creative. I worry that that's not going to be the case, because I feel like they are laying the seeds or laying the groundwork or planting the seeds, whatever analogy you want to use, for Cody Rhodes dethroning Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. Yeah, he could go over to Monday Night Raw and challenge whoever the world champion is. I mean, I could see something along the lines of LA Knight and a heel Drew McIntyre. That for sure is something that I believe they could go down that path. I just think that LA Knight deserves to be in the actual main event, and we all know that the World Championship will play second fiddle to Roman Reigns in the Undisputed Championship, which I understand. I just feel like LA Knight is deserving of the real spotlight. So I think it should be Roman Reigns, but I feel like if they do push him and have him win the Rumble and challenge for a world title, it will probably be against a heel Drew McIntyre on Monday Night Raw.
Fair. It is fair. I really love, it's fascinating to think about what the production meetings are for LA Knight when this whole thing started, and what their conversations were, and how they had to change their plans, but they didn't do it immediately. So they said they're going to play the long game. It'd be fascinating to be a fly on the wall or sneak into one of their Zoom meetings or whatever they have, and just hear what they have to say about this whole thing. And just to see and hear what their logic is. And it would really be fascinating, because, with LA Knight, I think that they're on to something major. Let's all hope, and it's not just a fad. I don't think LA Knight's a fad. We've been through fads. We've been through Fandango and Fandangoing. We've been through, I don't know, whoever else was a flash in the pan. Those kinds of things you can kind of feel coming off Mania. If they still have any kind of momentum, maybe, but I don't know. LA Knight feels like the real deal. He is the best candidate right now to beat Roman Reigns, and perhaps they do strike. But all right. Well, any thoughts on the U.S. title wrap up before we get to the women's side of things?
Just the fact that they have a lot of work to do to getting it to where the IC championship is.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. And the U.S. title was on a nice path with the whole run with Bobby Lashley. Seth Rollins held it for a hot minute. That program, I mean, they did a great job, and then all of a sudden it gets put on Austin Theory, and it just, especially after Mania this year, went into the crapper. I mean, and it's weird. No one would have saw that coming. The win was supposed to project Austin Theory, and instead the follow-up. I blame a lot of this on the follow-up of creative. They had no idea what they were going to do with Theory afterwards, and that played out on TV. So, all right, the women's division. This is also kind of weird. I feel the same way with Iyo. I feel like she wins the belt, she cashes in, and now she is going to be facing Asuka. We know this, but she doesn't feel like she is. It feels like they're trying to use the belt to make her, instead of her trying to add value to the belt. I'm never a fan of that formula. At the same time, I understand stars need to be made. With Iyo right now, it's almost like she's getting less attention as the champion. It doesn't feel like she's getting the attention she deserves on SmackDown. Instead, they're focusing on Charlotte and Shotzi, and it's like, what about your SmackDown Women's Champion? It feels like she's being creatively ignored. And it's not to say, again, that Asuka and Iyo are not going to be a great match, but let me just toss it to you.
Look, I believe we talked about this when she won the women's briefcase and the Money in the Bank briefcase. And I believe she was both of our picks going in. We both agreed that Iyo Sky was the correct winner for this. But one thing I said was that, save for Carmella, the inaugural Money in the Bank winner among women, they always cashed in the briefcase within like 3 months of holding it. And you've had Bailey, Alexa Bliss cash it in on the very same night. Asuka was awarded the championship the next night on Monday Night Raw in the briefcase because Becky Lynch was relinquishing it due to her being pregnant. Last year, was that the Nikki ASH year? Where she cashed it in like after a month. I forget who won the briefcase last year. But all this to say is that they never took the slow burn approach with the briefcase among women, except for the first time with Carmella. And I really thought that was the approach here with Iyo Sky, primarily because they still had to do a lot of character development with her and really kind of legitimize her as a main eventer. Even though she has all the potential in the world, and I think that she is going to be a main eventer for a lot of years to come, I didn't think she was quite ready for that. And I thought that you should have kept that briefcase on her all the way until post-WrestleMania. And also because you have the main event caliber talent on SmackDown among the women. Okay, Bianca Belair is taking time off right now, but you have Charlotte Flair who returned. You still had Asuka. You still have Bayley. Like, you could have had that championship rotate between those three women between now and next spring. And you could have had Bayley as the women's world champion next year to kind of set up that program. I like Iyo Sky. I thought she was the right person to win the briefcase. I just thought the timing of her cashing it in was so off. And lo and behold, it has proven to be right because she has kind of fell flat so far as the women's champion.
No, I'm with you. And it's this is the time right now to strike with Iyo if you're trying to get the focus on her. Like you said, with Bianca Belair out. The matchup with Iyo and Asuka is a good way to kind of shift things in the women's division from just Charlotte and whoever, or Bianca and whoever. It's different players in there. Obviously, Asuka's kind of been in the main event perennially, but with Iyo, it should be about building that new star, building new stars. And we all thought Bayley was going to turn on Iyo, and she didn't yet. Dakota Kai has been essentially invisible. I mean, Dakota Kai doesn't say anything. All she does is stand there. I'd like a little bit more involvement with Dakota. Where does she stand? What does she think about this? But eventually, Damage Control should finally just dissolve. But right now, it's a little bit discouraging if you're an Iyo Sky fan. Not that I think Asuka could win, but that they haven't really done much with her. It feels kind of like a little bit of a Rey Mysterio victory with the U.S. title. It's kind of like people are like, most people are excited for Iyo. Iyo's hard to dislike, by the way. Iyo Sky is just you notice they're putting her with Asuka, who's a heel, and she is solidly in that category as a heel right now. And you have the heel group of the Damage Control, in which Iyo Sky is part of that group, and yet they're putting him together because they know that Iyo Sky is kind of a babyface in that heel group, knowing that it's kind of like an acknowledgement that, yeah, we know that Iyo Sky is a fan favorite, even though she's in the heel group. But I'm waiting for the Bayley turn. I'm waiting for her to screw over Dakota Kai, or screw over Iyo, but I don't think it's going to happen yet. It seems like they're playing the long game there too. I'm just a little discouraged by it, and I want more character development, as you just mentioned. It comes down to character development, and they've done so little of that with Iyo. And suddenly you notice with Asuka, they're letting her speak. My God, she can say more words than nobody's ready for Asuka. It was a revelation. And I would like to hear more from Iyo. I want more. I don't care if they do a little bit of the Shinsuke tactic of a pre-made video with subtitles. I don't care what they do, but I like this new philosophy of, you know what? Even those that don't speak English natively, we're going to let them either speak and hopefully the crowd hears them through their accent, or we're going to do some work around like they did with Shinsuke. And I think that will really help Iyo Sky because she has very little character development. And I think that's her biggest hindrance right now.
And do you think it was too much too soon with Iyo?
That's too hard. That's too much to tell right now. I think once her title reign ends, I think we'll be able to judge that a little bit more because she became champion, like a month ago, right? So I think it's difficult to judge that until the title reign ends because, hell, maybe things start to really catch on in a month or so and people really start to take off on Iyo and the whole Bayley eventual turn on her will happen and they get behind her and momentum starts to build and they can do more character development. I'd say it's too early right now, but if her title reign ended tomorrow, then sure. In the short time she's been champion, I would say yes, it was too much too soon. And like you said at the beginning of this, they seemingly can't help but pull the trigger every time a woman wins that championship or that briefcase outside of Carmella. That they cannot help themselves. They're just like, oh, woman's got it, pull the trigger, let's do it. They have no patience. And I'm not sure why. Then sometimes letting that thing play out and make fans guess and keep it going is a lot of fun, and they just pull the trigger so quickly. Even that same night, they've done it a couple times. So yeah, that also would help generally in the women's division of just not cashing in so damn quick.
Yeah, I feel like it would have felt way more significant had she held the briefcase for like 6-7 months. Like, look at Damian Priest. Like, he's held it for a month and a half longer than Iyo did, and it already feels more important. And I just feel like you need to get the briefcase to a point where people almost forget about it. Like, just enough for people to just be like, oh yeah, he holds the briefcase, whatever, and then you capitalize. And that's not to say you could never have a same night cash in, like let's say Dean Ambrose from 2016 when he cashed in on Seth Rollins. But I just feel like way too often, specifically with the women, they just go right for it right away. And I thought Triple H would be more patient with Iyo because that has kind of been a hallmark of his, like being really patient, even with like championships and long-term storytelling. But it was, I get why they did it. Maybe the main event scene on SmackDown among the women felt stale with Bianca Belair and a returning Charlotte, and obviously Asuka's title reign was very lackluster. I just thought that there are other avenues. Like I would have liked to see a Bayley World Championship run, like, to be honest with you. But I mean, maybe that's still in the cards. Maybe she turns on Iyo. Maybe they're doing it in reverse as to how I maybe thought that they were going about it. So, I mean, like you said, it's kind of an incomplete grade to this point. I just think that they should have held off a bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm leaning, but I'll give my full report card once we actually get to the point of her dropping it. I'm leaning that way, but things can change because there's a lot we probably haven't seen yet. But this is it does feel rushed. I'm thinking maybe they had her cash in so quickly because they're thinking, well, if we don't, then they get later in the year, we don't have plans for her towards WrestleMania. She's got to kind of cash it in now, lose it so we can get it to the people we really want it to for WrestleMania season. I mean, I don't know if that was explicitly said or what, but that's sometimes the way I look at it is, you know, when you're 6 months out, 7 months out from WrestleMania, you can still give somebody a significant run, but having them drop the belt before the big time season begins, and then you can get the belt to who you want it to really be involved with. And so, yeah, with Iyo Sky, she's fun to watch. She certainly is very good in the ring. I'm sure her match with Asuka will be just fine. But it feels a bit underwhelming right now. They just kind of do things, but after the destination, they have no follow-up. It feels like follow-up has been a big problem for WWE, especially when it comes to title changes. Like, you have Iyo win, and then there's not a ton of follow-up. She's just kind of there. She's just like, the desk in your office. It's just there. You don't think about it, and I shouldn't be feeling that way. They've done this so many with Austin Theory, and obviously how many times I've brought that up with the win over John Cena. There's no follow-up. The women's tag titles, which that could be a whole nother discussion. They have people win, and then there's just no follow-up. They just go off into, the the dust into the sunset. You don't see him again. There was a time, I think, was it the I don't know, I forget what WrestleMania was, a couple of years ago. Was it the tag team championships were changed, and that the men's tag team championships were changed? I forget who it was, and they just went off and disappeared for like 6 weeks. It's just, sometimes there's just no follow-up. They just go, oh, all right, we did it, they're champion, and then somebody says, wait, we got to follow up. There's got to be some kind of plan, and they're like, oh, crap. It feels like that a lot of times. So I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts here?
All is, I just feel like they need to give Iyo, and they made this mistake with Austin Theory, is that they need to give her like an actual foe. Like, enough of this just like Shotzi and Charlotte and tag team matches. And is it Bayley versus Shotzi? Okay, is it Bayley versus Charlotte? Like that. And I think that was the main issue with Austin Theory's run as U.S. champion, is that he never really had a foe. Like, look at Gunther. We just talked about it. The foundation of his run as Intercontinental champion was based off of that amazing program and series of matches he had with Sheamus, which kind of spiraled off into the Brawling Brutes against Imperium. Like, that was the foundation of this historic title run. And Austin Theory never really had that. Like, he won it in a triple threat match. And then, yeah, he had that program with John Cena they had one face-to-face and one match that opened WrestleMania. But aside from that, like, who did he really, like, who was his primary foe as the United States champion? And I really can't tell you. Like, it felt like he didn't defend that United States championship for months. And I think that is kind of where they're going with Iyo Sky. Yes, she has damage control, but like you said, she's not the focal point. Like, it's felt like Shotzi and Bayley has been the focal point, and Charlotte and Iyo Sky has been playing second fiddle to them respectively. And I just feel like when you have a championship victory, you need to have that follow-up, typically with a primary foe. And like, even Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens kind of had that problem as well, although they really saved it with the Judgment Day. They kind of piggybacked off of the Bloodline, facing off against Roman and Solo at Night of Champions, and then they really salvaged it with the Judgment Day, and that was their foe as tag team champions. And I think Austin Theory didn't have that foe. And look, we're just a month in, like you said, still a lot of tread left on the tire, but that's the main issue right now, is who is the foe? Is it going to be Asuka? Maybe, and maybe this is how they salvage it.
It is a bit of a mess up until Asuka rose above the kind of sea of women that are mulling around in the women's division. Even Charlotte, who is arguably their biggest star, is still kind of feeling directionless, and that could be even a topic at some point too. Is like, Charlotte is just kind of flailing out there. And sure, she wins matches, her entrances are still what they are, she still gets a nice reaction, but Charlotte in and of herself is having a very strange part of her career where she doesn't get a bunch of mic time. It's just,
Could I add one thing about Charlotte?
Yeah.
What is she wearing? Like I don't I'm the last person you got to ask about fashion, women specifically, but it's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's her way of just trying to differentiate herself from the rest of the pack. I mean, that's why Shotzi cut her hair and then did what she did with her hair. I mean, it's all about differentiating yourself, making yourself look better or look different. Maybe that's what that is. I don't know. Charlotte's a weird cat. Like, and I mean that in a respectful way. She feels like in genuine real life, she's just kind of, she's just her own person. Like, I don't know. She works out to the point of like obsession, and good for her. I get it. But yeah, her outfits, I'm with you. It's different. No doubt about that.
It's like a microcosm of where her career is at right now.
Yes. Just weird spot. It's in a kind of flux. I don't know what this is for her. She's just, right now, Charlotte's going through the motions, and it's kind of weird to see that with her. It's not that I need to have her be the focal point of every week, but I guess I'm not used to her being just a background player, which is, again, I don't know if this is a complaint or not. It's just an adjustment, I guess, for fans of she doesn't get mic time consistently. She doesn't feel like she's on every show, and she's not in the main event chasing the women's championship. She's just in random tag matches with random foes and allies. Suddenly she's allied herself with Shotzi. Yeah, Charlotte's in a very strange place right now. I don't know. I don't know if that's a complaint or not, just kind of an observation.
Yeah, and Charlotte will always have that cachet of like when she turns it up a notch, like you will be invested. Even if you're not a particular Charlotte fan like myself, like when she is put in the main event scene, you are just automatically invested into her. But I don't know, it's the women's division is in a weird spot. Not even a bad spot, just a weird spot. Like even like the status of Becky Lynch right now. Like I believe last week I said like she was more of the issue with Trish, even though many people felt it was the latter who was the problem. But like, and I think that maybe WWE knows that as well with her going back to NXT.
Yeah, that it is strange with Becky. She's, like you said, she's also paralleling a little bit of Charlotte, where she's in this weird spot. And I mean, many people are upset of her going to NXT. I think it's great. I mean, many people have gone back to NXT, revived their careers, and come back. I have no problem at all with Becky going there. I wouldn't take that as a demotion. I would if I were her, and this isn't being, Mr. Positive, but really I would look at this as an opportunity, because she could go down there. It's house money down there. What happens down there isn't really going to affect what happens when she comes back to the main roster. She gets to go back to where she started, and it's kind of a feel good moment. The NXT doesn't always need to be a feeding ground. You can have people come back, so it'll help with their ratings and help with the women's division, have her help the current women there. It's really a win-win. I have no problem with it. It's just one word. It's just weird. The whole women's division, really everywhere on both rosters, but specifically SmackDown, it's kind of in a transition or holding pattern. I don't know what to make of how I feel about it, or directionless. I don't know what it is. But the women's division as a whole, from the tag team championships, which are always a debacle, to the women's championship with a champion that doesn't feel like she's really a champion, and it's very strange right now.
Yeah, and like I'm trying to look at some of the other like women's wrestlers on SmackDown as maybe somewhat like there's a tag team that came up. What was it? Isla Dawn and someone else? There you go. Like, so they've just been complete non-factors. Like B-Fab, well, I mean, she's anything but Fab right now. Like, I guess Zelina, that she's kind of like meandered around a bit, but I mean, it really has to be within one of those. It really has to be one of those four in shots, especially with Bianca out. It has to be like a Shotzi or a Bayley or a Charlotte or an Asuka. And to me personally, we're 2 years, 3 years removed now from Bayley as the SmackDown Women's Champion when Sasha finally dethroned her. I believe we're 3 years removed from that now. I think that Bayley, it's felt long enough now where I think she's the most interesting of all of them. And to be honest, I would like to see this version of Bayley as a babyface.
She could easily switch. And that's what I've said too, is not exactly that point, but she's been a background player for a long time now. I know that she re-debuted at last year's SummerSlam after her injury with her comrades there of Dakota Kai and Iyo Sky. And they confronted Bianca Belair. I understand that. And we were like, oh, wow, she's finally leading a faction. And then it literally, since that point, just petered out. And people were ready for that group to break up before they even got going. And it just didn't work out. But they're still together, amazingly, because I don't think they know what to do with them right now. But you're right. Bayley right now has been so out of the main event scene, it feels like, for so long, as far as the championship scene and getting an actual run with the championship. It feels like she's due. It feels like she's evolved. And I'm ready to see her as champion again, cutting good promos. I don't even care if it's babyface or heel, honestly. Babyface would be more interesting. But right now, I mean, you have Charlotte as a babyface, which also doesn't feel right. Charlotte as a babyface never feels right. I know that they've tried, and this is the most successful or closest they've gotten with Charlotte, but I feel like she's just born to be a heel, man. It feels unnatural. But with Bayley, man, I'm ready for her to break out. I want that whole group to dissolve. Everyone will be better for it. And I think she could easily have a long run with the championship. No doubt about it. So
yeah.
So
my final thoughts would literally just be like somehow have maybe Bayley get turned on or her turn on Iyo and have that program. And, I think that's something I would be looking forward to. And I don't want to see Iyo as a transitional champion, but that's something that I want to see is a babyface version of Bayley as the WWE Women's Champion, but not like the babyface version of her, like with Bayley buddies, like this version of Bayley, but as a babyface. And she is also someone who's inherently likable as well.
Yeah, the adult version.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's the adult version of Bayley. I like the adult version of Bayley. Just, there's not much she needs to tweak about her character either, and I think that it's something, just get rid of her laugh, stop at the cackling. And that's really all you need to do because she's got in-ring down. She's got the name value down. Her look has evolved. Don't like you said, don't resurrect the Bayley buddies from the grave. I don't need any of that. So that's really all they need to do. She's easily transitionable to that. And I think right now she's not being utilized to her full potential. I really don't believe she is. So, all right. Well, that'll conclude it for this episode of The Current State. But you guys don't forget, this coming Friday will be the inaugural episode of After Dark with Anthony DeMarco. So make sure you're subscribed on Patreon at the SmackDown tier and higher to get that episode. It'll be dropping every single Friday. Do you have any teaser as to what topic you'll be talking about on our very adult version of the After Dark show?
Honestly, I covered the question about if college is a ripoff on the teaser episode, but I mean, my other show had a lot of planning go into it, a lot of time and effort and sifting through clips and kind of piecing together like a storyline in a lot of ways that I was going to walk through. This one is going to really be off the cuff. So as of right now, I have no idea where we're going to go with it. But all I know is that wherever we do go, it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun.
I like that, guys. See, we do no show prep. That's how professional we are. I literally don't do any show prep half the time, and we just talk and BS. And most of the time, it comes off, I think, pretty well. So I like that, guys. Here at the WWE Podcast, we are of the utmost professionalism, and we don't prepare for our shows. And so, hey, I think it'll be exciting. It'll be fun. You guys should check that out on Patreon. Again, only on Patreon. You're not going to see it and hear it on this feed, so only on Patreon at the SmackDown tier and above. So all right, well, that'll conclude it, guys, and don't forget you can follow Anthony at ADeMarco25, right?
That's exactly
make sure I got that. All right, I'd hope I know it by now. All right, well, thanks everybody for listening, and thanks, buddy. We'll be talking in a week.
All right, man, looking forward to it.
Well, the NFL season is back, and that means your fantasy teams are being put to work. And I can tell you right now, for myself, I am not happy that I started Daniel Jones in my league. But I can tell you what I do like, and that is the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast. It's part of the Air It Out Podcast Network. It's hosted by longtime fantasy football players and friends, Joe and Chantel. And new episodes are released weekly. So every week you guys are going to be able to get an episode to get your fantasy fill, discussing all things fantasy football and everything noteworthy on the 2023 NFL season. And their highlight segment of the show is Show Up, Show Out, or a blank show. I think you know where I'm going with that, where they make specific player predictions and recommendations and discuss which players show up, show out, or are a complete crap show, for lack of a better word, for the week. And these guys are just getting started, okay? So they're going to need some love from you guys. Check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, and much more. You can also follow and rate them. Click on the little alarm bell for notifications so you can see when new episodes are released. And you can also find them on Instagram on the Air It Out Network. Of course, the best way is on Apple and Spotify. But in the search, make sure you type in Air It Out FFL. You look for the red and black logo. That's where you'll be able to find them. Again, guys, Air It Out FFL, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Check out the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.